Welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are stepping into a pretty profound exploration of primary texts.
Yeah, primary texts, historical assumptions, and, the very foundation of how a major world religion is practiced.
Right, because our mission today is to basically deconstruct and examine this radically different perspective on the pillars of Islam.
Exactly. And we're doing this by really immersing ourselves in the extensive writings of Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yeah, specifically focusing on his comprehensive work called The Great Nation and Best of Prayers.
Right, along with his supplementary essays on linguistics and theology. And, I mean, the scope of what Dr. Waleed is proposing here, it really can't be overstated.
No, it's massive.
It is. He's laying out this strict, uncompromising, Quran-only reinterpretation of Islamic history, geography, and daily ritual.
Which means bypassing centuries of, secondary literature, right?
Yeah, bypassing standard hadith collections, classical scholarly consensus, all of it. He applies this highly rigid methodology that looks solely at the linguistic roots of the Arabic text.
So he's attempting to excavate what he views as the original uncorrupted architecture of the faith.
Exactly. And the conclusions he draws from this purely linguistic excavation, they are staggering.
Staggering is the right word. Just to give you, the listener, a sense of where we're headed today, think about this. What if the original direction of prayer wasn't pointing anywhere near the Arabian Peninsula?
Right. What if it was somewhere else entirely?
And what if the prescribed number of daily prayers isn't 5, but actually 2?
2 prayers that are intrinsically tied to the physics of planetary motion.
It's just wild. Dr. Waleed is arguing that over centuries, this parallel, almost magical religion was constructed on top of the original text.
Yeah, a system that essentially led believers away from the primary evidence, into this matrix of inherited habits.
It's a total theological paradigm shift. He takes centuries of accepted tradition, examines that linguistic bedrock, and asserts that the fundamental coordinates of the religion have just been altered.
Both geographically and chronologically.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To understand how Dr. Waleed arrives at these massive structural conclusions, we really have to start at the linguistic atom, right?
We do. We have to look at how he defines a single word that forms the title of his broader thesis.
The concept of the middle nation, or al-Umma al-Wasat.
Yes, al-Umma al-Wasat.
Because, when I look at the word middle, my modern brain instantly spatializes it.
Right, you think of a map.
Exactly. I think of the Middle East, the Midwest, or like the middle lane of a highway. It implies a physical center point.
Which is the exact cognitive bias Dr. Waleed wants to dismantle on page 1.
Okay.
He argues forcefully that in the linguistic universe of the Quran, the root word wasat is entirely stripped of geographical or spatial meaning.
So it's not about being situated centrally on a continent.
Definitely not. And it definitively does not refer to a specific ethnic lineage or, a nationalist identity either.
How does he prove that, though? Just linguistically?
Well, he uses a strict cross-referencing methodology. He demands that the Quran define its own vocabulary by looking at how a root is deployed in varying contexts.
Right, and I found his textual cross-referencing to be quite compelling here because it removes the subjective nature of interpretation.
Yeah, it forces you to stick to the text.
He points to Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 89, which deals with the expiation of oaths. The verse commands the feeding of the needy from the, quote, middle of what you feed your own families.
Min asatima tutmuna alaikum.
Right, and if we apply a spatial or literal definition there, that implies taking a loaf of bread, carving out the exact center slice and handing that over.
Which obviously defies basic logic.
Exactly. So the internal logic of the text forces a qualitative definition.
Yes. In the context of providing food, middle translates to the best, the most balanced, the most just, and the fairest portion.
So you provide sustenance of the highest quality, not just the peripheral scrap.
Right. And Dr. Waleed layers this with another textual example from Surah Al-Kalam, verse 28, where the middle of a group speaks up.
And again, this isn't the person literally standing in the center of the room.
No, it's the most rational, the wisest, the most balanced intellect among them, acting as the voice of reason.
So by applying that strict linguistic constraint back to the phrase middle nation, he completely severs the concept from geography.
Completely. The middle nation becomes a qualitative state of being.
It's the balanced nation.
The just nation. The nation that operates perfectly on the fulcrum of rationality.
Meaning they aggressively avoid the extreme of radical fanaticism on one side and the extreme of total neglect or apathy on the other.
Exactly. And Dr. Waleed insists that adopting this qualitative state isn't simply some honorary badge a community gets to wear for historical reasons.
It's not a participation trophy.
No, being the middle nation is an active, highly demanding job description. It requires constant output.
I am curious about the specific parameters of this job description, actually. If you claim the title of the middle nation, what is the actual labor required by the text?
Well, Dr. Waleed draws the primary duty straight from the same foundational verse, Al-Baqarah 143.
Okay, what does it say?
It outlines the purpose of being this balanced nation to be witnesses over the people. Shuhada ala anas.
Witnesses. Let's view that through the lens of jurisprudence for a second.
Sure.
In any legal framework, a witness is only valuable if two conditions are met, right? Absolute impartiality and active observation.
Exactly.
If a witness favors one party due to, like, tribal affiliation, wealth, or shared history, their testimony is totally corrupt.
Right, it's thrown out.
And conversely, if a witness is asleep in the back row while the crime occurs, their testimony is non-existent.
That captures his intent perfectly. To fulfill the role of the middle nation, a community must be hyper-present in global affairs.
They have to be awake.
Awake, perceiving reality without ideological distortion, and dispensing justice with absolute impartiality.
Oh.
He links this concept of active witnessing to Surah Al-Imran, verse 110, which defines the best nation exclusively by their actions.
Which are?
Commanding what is right, forbidding what is wrong, and maintaining pure monotheism.
But if this identity is purely based on action and rationality, it completely undermines the concept of religious inheritance, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like, you can't be born into the middle nation just because your parents identified as such.
And that is a fundamental pillar of his thesis. He completely severs the identity of the true believer from bloodline, nationalism, or historical inertia.
So who is in this nation, then?
According to his reading, the middle nation represents a continuous, unbroken lineage of pure monotheists stretching all the way back to Adam.
Wow, okay.
Culminating through Abraham and extending to Muhammad. Anyone, regardless of their origin, who submits purely to the Creator without associating partners and actively steps into the arena to command justice instantly becomes part of the middle nation.
So it's a true meritocracy of faith in action.
Exactly.
Okay, while the qualitative definition of wasat makes linguistic sense, it creates a massive logistical void for me. Well, if this middle nation is defined by perfect intellectual and spiritual balance, and they're tasked with acting as the ultimate impartial witness for humanity, they still exist in the physical world, right?
Right. They're physical beings.
A collective body needs a center of gravity. They need a geographical anchor to unify their focus. Where exactly is their physical compass pointing?
And that logistical void you've just identified is the exact entry point into what is arguably Dr. Waleed's most explosive claim.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
If the nation itself isn't geographically centered, it must orient itself toward a true center. Which brings us directly to his radical reconstruction of the Qibla, the physical direction of prayer.
Right, because for the vast majority of the modern world, the Qibla is a settled fact. Over 1 billion people align their compasses toward the Kaaba in the Hijaz region.
But Dr. Waleed looks at the textual description of the Qibla's history, specifically the Quranic narrative detailing a deliberate shift in direction, and asserts that the historical timeline we've been handed is fundamentally flawed.
He treats the Quranic mention of a Qibla change as, like, a historical breadcrumb trail.
Yes. The text explicitly states that the direction of prayer was shifted specifically to test the believers.
So he sets out to solve this two-part historical equation using only textual clues.
Right. Question 1. What was the original corrupted Qibla that had to be abandoned? And question 2. What is the final true Qibla that the text actually points toward?
And his identification of that first Qibla, the initial epicenter of polytheism that he argues had to be rejected, is deeply grounded in historical revisionism.
Highly revisionist.
He asserts that the original Mecca, described in ancient texts as the mother of cities, a place of massive wealth, agricultural abundance, and complex polytheism, was not the arid settlement in the Hijaz.
No, he argues it was Petra.
Petra.
Yes. Petra, the ancient Nabatean capital located east of the Jordan River, carved directly into the rose-red sandstone.
This is where Dr. Waleed's work intersects with a highly controversial branch of Western academic scholarship, right?
It does. He is essentially validating the core archaeological premise of historians like Patricia Crone, Michael Cook, Tom Holland, and particularly Dan Gibson.
Because for years, these researchers have pointed out a glaring mismatch between the primary textual descriptions of early Islamic geography and the physical reality of the Hijaz.
Right. The texts describe a lush agricultural hub, a central node for global trade routes connecting the Levant, Europe, and Asia.
And that simply doesn't describe the isolated desert environment of modern-day Mecca.
It doesn't. But the Western revisionists have extensively documented that the Nabateans who constructed Petra held a monopoly over the lucrative incense and spice trade routes.
So Petra was a true geopolitical crossroads, bustling with international commerce.
Exactly. It perfectly fits the textual description of a mother of cities. Furthermore, the archaeological record shows Petra was a massive center for polytheistic worship.
Right, housing temples dedicated to deities like Dushara, Alat, and Aluza.
Which are the exact idols mentioned in the early historical narratives.
Now, I would expect Dr. Waleed to champion these Western academics for providing the archaeological hardware to support his textual software.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah, but he does the exact opposite.
He really does.
He leverages their geographical findings to support the Petra hypothesis, but then launches this blistering critique against the historians themselves.
Accusing them of engaging in a deliberate, malicious suppression of truth.
I mean, understanding this critique is vital to grasping Dr. Waleed's broader worldview.
It is, because he fully acknowledges the accuracy of their geographical and archaeological data regarding Petra, but he argues their underlying motivation for publishing these findings is entirely destructive.
He posits that these Western academics exposed the Petra connection solely to demolish the historical foundation of traditional Islam and shatter the unity of the Muslim world.
And crucially, he accuses them of deliberately hiding the second half of the equation.
Right. They revealed the false center, but maliciously concealed the true destination,
leaving believers adrift in a sea of historical doubt.
So, if the Western historians dismantled the false center but hid the true one, what does Dr. Waleed's purely linguistic map reveal as the ultimate destination?
Wow.
Like, when the Qibla was shifted away from the polytheism of Petra, where did the compass needle finally settle?
Dr. Waleed concludes, through his rigorous textual cross-referencing, that the true blessed center of pure monotheism, a location referred to in the Quran as Bakka, is not an alternative name for the desert Mecca. He identifies Bakka exclusively as Jerusalem. Al-Quds. Jerusalem.
So in Dr. Waleed's theological framework, the ultimate direction of prayer, the true eternal Kaaba of absolute monotheism, is firmly rooted in Jerusalem.
Yes. And he doesn't arrive at this conclusion in a vacuum. He anchors this geographical shift in the grand archetypal narrative of the Quran.
The journey of Abraham.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed argues that the entire concept of the Qibla shift is mathematically and spiritually modeled on Abraham's physical migration.
Let's trace that archetypal migration for a second.
Right.
Where does Abraham start, and where does he end up according to this map?
According to Dr. Waleed's reading, Abraham originates in the east. He is situated in the region encompassing Petra and the broader Levant.
An area saturated with centralized polytheism, right?
Right, the worship of celestial bodies, statues, physical idols. And Abraham's defining act of monotheism is his migration.
He physically and spiritually moves from the east toward the west.
He abandons the polytheistic epicenter and travels to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, stepping into the uncorrupted light of pure monotheistic worship.
So it is a literal transit from darkness to light, mapped onto the geography of the Middle East.
Precisely. And Dr. Waleed argues that the Prophet Muhammad's journey is designed as an exact spiritual and geographical repetition of this Abrahamic template.
It's the necessary severing of ties with the polytheistic center, which he identifies as Petra, and a deliberate turning toward the true historical center of divine light, Jerusalem.
Dr. Waleed even delves into linguistic shifts to mirror this transition.
Like what?
Well, he suggests that the very names of figures shift to reflect this journey, such as moving from the Eastern pronunciation of Abraham to the Western monotheistically aligned Ibrahim.
Oh, that's fascinating. But, you know, the mechanics of this shift raise a profound psychological question for me.
What's that?
If the Qibla isn't merely a physical structure that you are required to point your rug toward, what is its actual function in the text? Why does the divine care about spatial orientation if God is supposedly everywhere?
Dr. Waleed is unambiguous on this point. The Qibla is fundamentally engineered as a mechanism of psychological and social testing.
Okay.
He repeatedly cites the Quranic verse stating the Qibla was established specifically to see who would follow the messenger and who would turn on their heels.
It's an allegiance test.
Exactly.
It forces the believer to physically demonstrate what they value more.
Yeah.
Divine instruction or cultural comfort.
It is the ultimate rupture of inherited tradition. Just imagine the sociological impact of this. If your ancestors have faced a specific direction for centuries, and that spatial orientation is deeply intertwined with your local economy, your tribal pride, your civic identity.
Yeah, being commanded to physically turn your back on that center and face Jerusalem is a violent disruption of the status quo.
In Dr. Waleed's paradigm, the Qibla is an active daily declaration. It's saying, I consciously choose the center of divine truth, even if it requires abandoning the center of my historical and worldly comfort.
So we have completely recalibrated the spatial compass. The balanced middle nation is now standing firmly facing Jerusalem as the true center of monotheism.
Right.
But fixing the spatial coordinates instantly breaks the temporal ones for me.
How so?
Well, if he has completely moved the physical location of prayer away from standard tradition, does that mean the traditional schedule of when we pray is also based on a false premise? Because how does Dr. Waleed calculate the mechanics of time without relying on the traditional hadith literature that established the 5 daily prayers?
That logical gap you just identified is exactly where Dr. Waleed takes his linguistic scalpel next.
Okay.
He completely deconstructs the traditional mechanics of time, focusing intensely on the concept of the middle prayer.
The middle prayer, al-salat al-wusta.
Yes.
In standard practice, this is almost universally interpreted as the afternoon prayer, simply because it sits numerically in the dead center of the 5 daily prayers.
2 before it, 2 after.
Right. It's a purely mathematical assumption based on a sequence.
An assumption Dr. Waleed entirely rejects, arguing that it fundamentally violates the linguistic rules of the Quran itself.
So he returns to the grammar of the primary text to prove that the traditional numerical interpretation is deeply flawed.
Exactly. Let's look at his breakdown of Al-Baqarah 238, which states, maintain the prayers and the middle prayer.
The conjunction there is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting in his theory.
The conjunction is everything. Dr. Waleed argues that if the Quran simply intended to mandate a sequence of 5 equal prayers, the text would efficiently say, maintain the prayers.
Right, you wouldn't need to specify.
Exactly. By explicitly adding the conjunction and, followed by a specific descriptor, wusta, or middle, the text is isolating that specific prayer based on its qualitative nature, not its numerical position in a sequence.
This connects directly back to his definition of the middle nation. If wasat doesn't mean spatial middle, it can't mean numerical middle either.
The linguistic consistency is striking, isn't it?
It really is.
If the middle nation represents the best, most balanced, and most just community, then the middle prayer must inherently mean the best, most balanced, and most deeply connected state of prayer.
So it describes the quality and intensity of the connection.
It denotes a state of prayer where the individual is entirely submissive, embodying what the text refers to as quanatin, a state of absolute unwavering devotion.
Okay, but defining the quality of the prayer is one thing. It still requires a temporal anchor, right? You can't just engage in high-quality prayer at random intervals if it's meant to be a structured ritual.
Right.
So when does this actually happen?
This is where Dr. Waleed introduces a highly complex, mathematically driven astronomical claim.
Okay.
By isolating the Quranic verses that dictate the timing of physical prayer, he argues that the text only explicitly mandates 2 physical prayer windows throughout the solar cycle, not 5.
2, not 5.
Just 2. And these windows are not tied to arbitrary hours on a clock. They are strictly and inexorably tied to the atmospheric transition of light and dark.
He completely removes the clock from the equation and forces the believer to read the horizon.
Exactly.
The timing becomes entirely dependent on the twilight transition zones.
The physical act of prayer, the specific bodily movements and recitations must be executed exclusively during these 2 transitional periods. Any physical ritual prayer performed outside these astronomical windows is, according to his reading, mathematically invalid.
So let's examine the precise mechanics of these transition zones. How does he calculate the morning window without traditional astronomical tables?
Well, Dr. Waleed relies on verses like Isra 78 and Hud 114 to define the morning parameter. He argues the window opens at the exact moment of the first visual glimmer of light piercing the darkness of the sky.
What is traditionally known as Fajr.
Right. The window remains open as the light intensity increases, but it slams shut at the absolute microsecond the physical edge of the sun breaches the horizon.
Whoa, okay.
Once the solar disk is visible, the time for the morning prayer has expired.
And the evening window operates as the exact inverse of that astronomical event, I assume.
Correct. The evening window initiates the exact moment the bottom edge of the sun touches the horizon to begin its descent.
Okay.
This window remains open as the light fades until the complete absence of solar light is achieved.
A state the Quran refers to as Gasak al-Layl, true darkness.
Exactly.
A window of twilight. That is an incredibly tight constraint for a daily ritual. But why specifically twilight?
What do you mean?
Well, if God created the entire 24-hour cycle, what is the theological or cosmic logic behind restricting physical connection to these fleeting transitional moments?
Dr. Waleed identifies a profound theological necessity for this timing, rooting it in the absolute prevention of idolatry.
How so?
He points directly to Surah Fussilat, verse 37, which explicitly commands humanity. Do not prostrate to the sun or to the moon, but prostrate to God who created them.
So he argues that performing the physical prostration during these specific fleeting twilight hours is the ultimate physical demonstration of pure monotheism.
Right.
But how does the timing itself prevent the idolatry?
Consider the physical reality of the sky. When you pray during the transition, when the sun is rising but not fully dominant or setting but not fully extinguished, you are effectively prostrating with the celestial bodies, not to them.
Oh, wow.
You are joining the cosmos in a state of transition and submission to the Creator.
That makes a lot of sense. By refusing to bow down when the sun is at its zenith or fully present in the sky, you are bypassing the majesty of the creation to connect directly with the architect of that creation.
Precisely.
You know, I look at this almost like trying to tune into a very specific, highly encrypted cosmic radio broadcast.
I like that analogy.
Because the universe is flooded with static and noise, right? But in Dr. Waleed's paradigm, the divine is broadcasting on these highly specific twilight frequencies.
Yes, the physical transition of photons and darkness is the frequency itself.
And if you attempt to tune in at high noon or dead midnight, you just miss the live broadcast.
You completely miss the influx of specific cosmic energy that Dr. Waleed argues is only transmitted during those liminal spaces between day and night.
That analogy perfectly captures the bioenergetic undertone of his work, I think.
It really does. For Dr. Waleed, the timing is not an arbitrary test of discipline. It is a structural, physics-based mechanism of the universe designed simultaneously to prevent the worship of matter and to maximize the spiritual connection of the soul.
Okay, so we've completely dismantled and rebuilt the coordinates. The Qibla is Jerusalem. The time is strictly confined to the two twilight windows.
We have.
This brings us to the actual execution. Because if the location and the time have been radically altered by this linguistic reading, the physical act of prayer itself must look entirely different.
No, it does.
What exactly are you doing when the twilight window opens?
You are correct to assume a radical deconstruction of the physical act. To understand his choreography of prayer, we have to look at Dr. Waleed's deep fascination with the Quranic concept of divine pairs.
Divine pairs. You know, when I see the word pairs in a theological context, I immediately think of the biological binary of male and female.
Sure, most people do, but Dr. Waleed expands that concept far beyond biology. He analyzes the Quran and sees an intricate system of binaries governing reality.
Like what?
The seen and the unseen, the command and the creation, energy and matter, the mind and the heart. He theorizes that because human beings are fundamentally created as a pair, a physical vessel constructed of matter and a spiritual soul composed of energy, our mechanism for connecting with the divine must rigorously engage both halves of our nature.
So a purely silent, meditative contemplation of God is insufficient because it neglects the matter, the body.
Correct.
And simultaneously, executing a series of rapid physical movements without deep intellectual engagement is equally invalid because it starves the energy, the soul.
Exactly. True connection, true prayer, in his view, requires the simultaneous activation of the physical body through deliberate movement, which he terms sabah, and the spiritual mind through the recitation and comprehension of the Quran, which he identifies as dhikr.
Let's break down his step-by-step manual for this activation then. How does a practitioner of Dr. Waleed's theology actually prepare for and execute this connection?
The process begins long before the astronomical window opens. It starts with preparation, specifically a highly literal, bioenergetic real interpretation of ritual washing, or wudu.
Now, ritual washing is universally understood as a symbolic purification. You're cleaning off the physical dirt of the world before standing before the divine.
But Dr. Waleed pushes past symbolism into what sounds almost like electrical engineering.
Really?
Yes. He meticulously analyzes the verse commanding the washing of the face, the hands and arms to the elbows, and the wiping of the head and feet to the ankles.
Okay, so the standard process.
Right. But he argues this specific application of water isn't about hygiene. By applying water to these exact extremities, you are physically altering the conductivity of your body.
Conductivity.
Yes, you are preparing the physical hardware, the matter, to become an energetically conductive vessel capable of receiving the intense software of the cosmic connection during twilight.
Oh, wow. You're literally preparing the human antenna to receive the broadcast.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
But an antenna is useless without data to process. Where does the intellectual half of the pair come in?
The data is downloaded during what he heavily emphasizes as the nightly study.
I saw this in his writings, actually. The emphasis on nocturnal Quranic reading is massive. It's not just a suggestion. It feels like a prerequisite.
It is an absolute prerequisite. Dr. Waleed argues that the expansive temporal void between the closing of the evening twilight window and the opening of the morning twilight window, the deep night, is specifically engineered for rigorous intellectual study of the Quran.
So you have to put in the work.
You must read, process, and mentally absorb the textual data before you ever attempt to step onto the prayer mat. The mind must be fully saturated with the text before the body is allowed to move.
Okay, so the hardware is conductive. The software is downloaded, the morning twilight window cracks open. What is the precise physical choreography Dr. Waleed extracts from the linguistic roots?
Dr. Waleed structures the physical movements based on his reading of the word ikmas, which translates roughly to establishments or sets of prayer.
Okay.
He concludes there are exactly 5 sets required daily, but they are distributed across the 2 twilight windows.
That is fascinating. The number 5 survives the deconstruction, but its application is entirely different. It's no longer 5 times a day, but 5 physical sets of movement.
Correct. The numerical value shifts from chronology to choreography. He mathematically allocates 2 sets of physical movement to be completed during the morning twilight window and 3 sets to be completed during the evening twilight window.
So walk me through the mechanics of a single set. What is the linguistic logic driving the physical postures?
Dr. Waleed extracts a highly specific linear progression from the verses. The set initiates with the practitioner standing completely upright, declaring the absolute greatness of God.
Okay.
While standing, they recite the Fatiha, the opening chapter, which he defines as the foundational covenant between the human, and the Creator. Following the covenant, they recite the specific verses they process during their nightly study.
So the standing posture is the vessel delivering the data. What triggers the movement?
Once the recitation is complete, the practitioner physically bows. Dr. Waleed doesn't view this as mere reverence. Linguistically, bowing represents the physical manifestation of submission to the command you just recited.
Interesting.
You then return to the standing position, acknowledging the weight of the command. Following this, you drop to your knees, a posture he explicitly associates with grounding oneself and expressing gratitude to God upon the earth.
It is a deeply deliberate, almost mechanical progression of spiritual physics.
And this progression culminates in the most vital movement. 2 distinct prostrations, placing the forehead directly on the ground.
What do those represent in his view?
Dr. Waleed identifies the first prostration as the ultimate posture of seeking forgiveness, wiping the slate clean. The second prostration is the pursuit of permanence, attempting to lock in the energetic connection established during the set.
Wow.
The set concludes by returning to a seated position, testifying exclusively to the absolute oneness of God and terminating the sequence.
The internal logic is airtight. Honestly, the linguistic derivation matches the physical output perfectly.
It does.
However, there is a strict, uncompromising rule he enforces during this entire choreography that will send absolute shockwaves through the current practice of millions of people.
Oh, yes.
Because it is a massive disruption of emotional and historical resonance.
You are pointing toward his uncompromising enforcement of absolute monotheism during the state of prayer.
I am. Because if you look at standard traditional practice, Across both Sunni and Shia denominations, the inclusion of human names is deeply woven into the emotional fabric of the ritual.
Definitely.
Sending blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad, mentioning the lineage of Abraham, or in Shia practice, invoking Allah. These aren't add-ons. They are considered integral to the validity of the prayer by the Orthodox consensus.
And this is exactly where Dr. Khaled Waleed delivers his most blistering, uncompromising theological critique.
Let's hear it.
He states with absolute linguistic finality that during these 50-minute twilight windows, while the practitioner is in this hyperconductive state of connection, the worshiper must absolutely never vocalize the name of any prophet, any saint, any companion, or any human being whatsoever.
Zero human names. No Muhammad, no Abraham, no Ali, no intercessors of any kind.
None. He anchors this absolute prohibition in a literal reading of the Quranic verse. And the places of worship are for God, so do not invoke anyone along with God.
He takes that very literally.
Very. Dr. Waleed does not mince words here. He views the inclusion of these beloved human names in the traditional inherited prayer structures as a literal, undeniable form of polytheism.
It's just wow.
He argues that introducing human figures, no matter how historically vital or spiritually elevated they are, corrupts the direct energetic channel. In that fleeting twilight window, the connection must exist exclusively, violently, between the individual pair of matter and energy and the Creator. Just God, nothing else.
That is a theological earthquake. To look at billions of people who believe they are performing the ultimate act of devotion, and to linguistically categorize their mention of the prophet as an act of polytheism, it strips the ritual down to its absolute, most terrifyingly raw wire.
It really does.
It removes all the historical comfort and forces you to stand completely alone in the universe.
It is a radical, almost clinical purification of the language of worship. But what is vital to understand about Dr. Waleed's thesis is that this intense, purified, isolated connection to God during twilight is not designed to turn the believer into an ascetic hermit.
No.
No. The purpose of gathering this raw, unfiltered cosmic energy isn't to detach from the suffering of the world. It is the exact opposite.
Which brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most complex and practically applicable piece of this theological puzzle.
The theology of action.
Right. Because if you are successfully plugging into the cosmos twice a day, gathering pure energy and data, what is the required output of that energy?
To comprehend his required output, we really have to examine his highly unique, pragmatic translation of two foundational Quranic terms that govern action, qada and ikma.
Now, in classical Islamic jurisprudence, qada is almost universally translated as the act of judging, decreeing, or making a definitive legal ruling.
But Dr. Waleed rejects the purely legalistic translation. He redefines qada as the meticulous internal planning phase of action.
The planning phase.
Yes, it is the careful studying of geopolitical and social variables. It is the mental and spiritual preparation required before any physical movement occurs. He likens qada to the complex internal processing of the soul when faced with a crisis.
I am reading this as a tactical boardroom strategy session. You are gathering the cosmic data from your prayer, weighing the societal options, analyzing the threats, and meticulously deciding what the most just course of action is.
That is precisely how he frames it. And ikma, the second term, is the physical, real-world execution of that carefully crafted plan.
Okay, so planning and execution.
Right. Therefore, when the Quran commands believers to establish the prayer, or aqim as-salat, Dr. Waleed does not see a command to perform a ritual and then go back to sleep.
What does he see?
He sees a holistic, continuous cycle of tactical engagement. You connect to God during the twilight windows to gather raw energy and objective clarity. You utilize that clarity to engage in a qada planning, how to assist the oppressed in your community, how to dismantle corruption, how to enforce justice.
And then, fueled by that plan, you rise up to execute at ikma.
Exactly.
So in this paradigm, prayer is definitively not a meditation retreat designed to lower your blood pressure and make you feel peaceful.
No, not at all.
It is a tactical briefing. It is a mandatory strategy session for the Middle Nation.
It is the ultimate pragmatic theology. And Dr. Waleed extracts practical rules of engagement for this theology from verses that command believers to remember God while standing, sitting, or lying on your side.
I'm looking at this text on standing, sitting, or lying on your side. And honestly, in traditional readings, it just sounds like posture to me.
Like a physical state of being.
Right. It sounds like a command to maintain internal piety, regardless of your physical orientation. How does he extract a system of project management out of basic bodily positions.
Because he refuses to read the text as merely descriptive, he reads it as prescriptive mechanics. For Dr. Waleed, standing is the state of action.
Oh.
It means your boardroom session was successful, you possess the required resources and clarity, and you act immediately to execute your plan for justice.
And sitting.
Sitting is the state of tactical patience. It means your analysis reveals that the external conditions aren't quite right yet. Perhaps you lack the manpower, or the political climate is too hostile, so you wait patiently, preserving your energy, but you remain acutely ready to stand the moment variables shift.
Oh, that's fascinating. And lying on your side?
Lying on your side is the ultimate act of analytical humility. It means your kata process revealed that your proposed plan was fundamentally flawed, or that executing it would cause more harm than good, so you actively shelf the idea entirely, putting it to rest to prevent systemic damage.
It's literal project management derived from ancient prayer postures.
It really is.
Standing is the green light for go, sitting is the yellow light for pause and assess, lying down is the red light for cancel and restructure. It completely removes all the mystical fluff and replaces it with actionable physics.
And this extreme pragmatism is exactly why Dr. Waleed takes this entire theoretical framework, the meticulously defined Middle Nation, the geographically relocated Qibla of Jerusalem, the strictly purified Twilight Prayer, the project management of kata and ikma, and drops it squarely onto the most volatile geopolitical map in the modern world.
And this is where we must tread with extreme analytical care.
Absolutely.
I want to make it explicitly clear to you, the listener, that we are about to objectively detail Dr. Waleed's theological interpretation of modern history and violent geopolitics. We are acting strictly as impartial reporters of his textual application.
Right. We are not endorsing his worldview, validating his political claims, or taking any sides in the conflicts he references.
Exactly. We are simply unpacking how his linguistic reading of ancient texts compels him to view the modern world.
That framing is essential, because Dr. Waleed does not keep his theology in the ancient past.
No, he doesn't.
He directly, unequivocally maps these concepts of tactical action and divine migration hijra onto the agonizing real-world struggle for the Holy Land. He points the theology directly at the modern conflict over Palestine and Jerusalem.
How exactly does he make that leap from abstract linguistic analysis to identifying specific actors in a modern geopolitical war?
He achieves this by interpreting highly specific Quranic verses detailing the weak and oppressed in the land. Dr. Waleed argues these verses are not just historical anecdotes.
What are they then?
He says they refer directly and presently to the Arab and Palestinian people who have been historically displaced, marginalized, and subjected to violence in the region.
Through his lens, the modern conflict is not merely a secular political land dispute over borders.
No, it is the ultimate cosmic theological battle over the true center of the monotheistic faith.
And in mapping this conflict, he applies an incredibly heavy apocalyptic theological identification to the opposing side, doesn't he?
He does. He textually equates the modern state of Israel, whom he refers to, using the Quranic designation Bani Israel, with the terrifying destructive forces of Gog and Magog, or Ya'juj and Ma'juj.
For anyone familiar with Abrahamic eschatology, applying the label of Gog and Magog to a modern nation state is an explosive claim.
It's massive.
Traditionally, Gog and Magog are viewed as chaotic, almost mythical forces of global destruction reserved for the end times. To apply that label to a contemporary political entity fundamentally alters the nature of the conflict for anyone who accepts his reading.
It does. By applying that specific apocalyptic label, Dr. Waleed elevates the physical geopolitical struggle into a literal defense of the universe's true energetic center.
Right.
He argues that the systematic displacement of people from the Holy Land, from Jerusalem, the true Baka, is a direct, catastrophic violation of the Creator's fundamental command regarding the sanctity of that space.
And this violently pragmatic view of geopolitics brings his entire thesis full circle back to the mechanics of prayer, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, because if the Middle Nation is required to act as the witness, and they are engaged in a literal physical struggle against what he deems apocalyptic forces over the center of the faith, the prayer cannot just be a peaceful ritual. It has to function in a war zone.
Ah, yes. And Dr. Waleed proves his thesis by analyzing the verses that dictate exactly that scenario.
The wartime verses.
Yes. He meticulously breaks down the Quranic instructions for performing the prayer during times of extreme fear or active military engagement. The verses do not permit the suspension of the twilight connection.
You don't just get a pass because you're fighting.
Exactly. Instead, they describe a highly tactical rotation of troops. One division of soldiers engages in the physical prayer sequence, while the other division holds their weapons and maintains the perimeter, and then they systematically switch positions.
It's the theology of the foxhole.
It is proof, in Dr. Waleed's view, that this religion, stripped of its inherited historical fluff, was never intended to be confined to the quiet, peaceful interior of a beautifully decorated mosque.
Right.
It is fundamentally, unavoidably grounded in the brutal, physical, worldly struggle for justice. The text openly acknowledges the reality of violent conflict, the necessity of guarding your physical weapons against infiltration, and the absolute requirement to stay hypervigilant even while attempting to download cosmic energy from the divine.
He is basically arguing that the primary text itself acts as a military manual for the soul.
It is.
You do not suspend your connection to the Creator because you are enveloped in a struggle. The sheer magnitude of the struggle demands the influx of energy that only the twilight connection can provide.
Precisely. In his culminating vision, the true middle nation must remain absolutely centered on the Qibla of Jerusalem, continually drawing pure, uncorrupted energy during the specific 50-minute twilight windows in order to maintain the immense psychological and physical stamina required for this ongoing geopolitical and spiritual resistance.
Wow. If we pull all the way back, zooming out from the linguistic roots of Wasat, past the archaeological dust of Petra, beyond the astronomical physics of twilight, and look at the massive sweeping scope of what we've unpacked today from Dr. Khaled Waleed's writings.
The synthesis is genuinely breathtaking in its sheer scale and audacity.
It really is.
By relying entirely on his rigorous, linguistic, root-based reading of the Quran, Dr. Waleed has systematically, piece by piece, dismantled the massive inherited structures of traditional Islam.
He has geographically relocated the holiest city from the sands of Mecca to the stones of Jerusalem.
He has mathematically condensed the daily prayer schedule from 5 scattered hours to 2 highly specific physics-based twilight windows.
He has ruthlessly purified the language of worship, excising all human names to enforce a terrifyingly pure state of absolute monotheism.
And he has taken all of this seemingly abstract theology and weaponized it, tying it directly to real-world modern geopolitical resistance.
It is the intellectual equivalent of tearing a massive centuries-old skyscraper down to its foundational studs, realizing the original blueprints were misread, and rebuilding an entirely new structure using only the primary text as the architectural guide.
That's an incredible way to picture it. And this is the profound power of Dr. Waleed's work. Whether an individual agrees with his specific linguistic methodology or whether they vehemently reject his radical geopolitical conclusions, his writings force a deeply uncomfortable confrontation with the mechanics of belief.
Right.
He forces us to examine exactly how we arrive at what we confidently label as truth.
And that is exactly the philosophical thought I want to leave you, the listener, with today. At the core of all these massive geopolitical and theological shifts, Dr. Waleed is arguing forcefully that the vast majority of human beings are essentially sleepwalking through their existence.
Yeah.
They are blindly, comfortably following inherited traditions, what the Quran derisively calls what they found their forefathers doing, rather than doing the grueling, agonizing work of interrogating the primary evidence for themselves.
It's easier to just follow the crowd.
So think deeply about that concept for a moment. Regardless of your personal religious affiliation, or if you operate entirely outside the sphere of religion, this critique applies to every framework of human knowledge: science, history, politics, economics.
It's true for all of it.
How much of what you confidently accept as absolute, unquestionable truth is actually rooted in your own rigorous, independent examination of the primary evidence? And how much of your worldview is simply the soothing comfort of inherited routine? The comfort of looking at a map drawn by someone else and blindly trusting that the X is exactly where they told you it was.
That's a heavy thought.
Dr. Khaled Waleed's work suggests that true clarity requires the courage to question the map itself. It is a profoundly uncomfortable question, requiring a massive expenditure of intellectual energy, but perhaps that intense discomfort is exactly where genuine learning and true connection actually begin. Thank you for joining this massive deep dive into the source material. The primary texts are waiting for your analysis. We will catch you next time.